All right, I am late, but I am here as usual. I can't. It's horrible. I'm gonna have to become more punctual. Anyway, appreciate you guys being patient and hanging out and revving up the chat here. Looks like we've got a good one going tonight. Lots of things going on today. We went over a lot of different things in the Mastermind community this morning on the call there. Talking about geopolitics, the political scene, what's going to happen if Biden, obviously, it seems as though he's obviously put forth that he's no longer participating in the election this year, and he's endorsed Kamala Harris. Don't wish any ill on him, but nobody's seen him in 5 days. And so that obviously leads to some pretty significant uncertainty for what's actually going on. So it seems to be the main topic of discussion across the majority of the crypto sphere, and then also Twitter and other social media platforms. So I don't know. I won't speculate on it. We'll see. Hopefully we get some type of official announcement that does clear things up for people. But in the meantime, there is uncertainty, so that tends to mean volatility in the market, and which could be good, could be bad. We'll find out. So as usual, anything goes. If you guys want to run down anything to do with macroeconomics, mitigating taxes, estate planning, anything that you think might be beneficial for your digital assets and your future, pending price appreciation. We are on the precipice, I believe, of a pretty significant move higher in some of the assets that a lot of people that are going to watch this channel hold, which is exciting. And with that, we'll go ahead and hop into it and run down some of the things that are here in the chat. If you do have any questions, please post in the chat. And if you wouldn't mind, if you do like the stream that goes on here, whether you're out there on X or if you are on YouTube, please, like, share, subscribe, do all the fun things that do help the algorithm. So with that, we go over here to the chat. And first off, we do have this person's asked if I've looked into ICP. So I've looked into ICP in the past, not Insane Clown Posse, but Internet Computer and that protocol. I do think, with the information that came about July 29th and the derivatives market and providing a price feed for that for XRP and ICP, that's going to be significant. It has this extreme all-time high. If we get back there, that's very lucrative for people. I know Austin Green and a few other people are super bullish on ICP, and it's probably in the top 20 projects that I would look at. I do think that it probably has a future in some capacity and will compete. I don't know about on a global scale, but at least in a specific use case, I think that you'll see some adoption there for that network. So, yeah, is it something I hold in my portfolio? Transparently, no. But I do think it is something that will last a long time and probably end up having utility on its network. Liam says, I'm going to miss the live, but watch after. Thanks for everything you do. Can I ask your thoughts on Flare and how it will interact with the XRPL? Smash that smash the like button, folks. Thank you, Liam. So the FTSO, the Flare time series Oracles are going to be on the XRPL. It's XLS 47D, and I think that that's going to be a big piece of that. I think the Flare time series Oracles will provide, it provides people an incentive to provide good data in the Oracles. I think that it'll probably be used in that capacity for the network on the long term, along with Chainlink and some of the other Oracles. If it's IoT, it could be IOTA. I don't know what all will end up on the XRPL, but I think Flare and the FTSO will definitely play a role in that capacity. As far as FXRP goes and the utility for DeFi, that's yet to be seen. There's been a lot of talk about that over the years, and really don't have the adoption there yet, and they haven't launched the FS yet. So have to see, what type of adoption we get when they actually launch those. I am, and just transparently, I'm concerned about the protocol there. Unless you're putting up both sides of that transaction to mint the FXRP, you do have counterparty risk. So the whatever party you're working with to mint the FXRP is going to have to put up 2 times the value of X, or 2.5 times the value of XRP in Spark. If somebody wants to run off with your XRP and you end up getting the 2.5 times that value in Spark, then they can do that. And you're left with, you don't have your XRP anymore. So you get the Spark. And there are some other, ramifications for that if they choose to do those things. But I just, any way that I could possibly lose XRP, I'm not into. So the only way I would participate in minting FXRP and using that to earn a yield is going to be if I'm putting up both sides of that transaction and there's no counterparty risk. So I do think that the institutions will likely use Flare, and I do think that that'll be interoperable with the XRPL and their XRP. We'll have to see. We're still super early on a lot of this stuff, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. Big G, good name. He says, or she, any thoughts on how the gaming industry could be impacted or incorporated into the XRPL, giving XRP another avenue for growth? I've seen some games being developed on the XRPL, but they look childish. So, a gentleman that I know, he lives here close to me. He actually has the largest game built on the XRPL. He also has the largest liquidity pool and an AMM on the XRPL, and that's crypto land. Look, some games are quote unquote childish, but they're still fun, right? People are going to play them. There's a lot of people that are into anime and all kinds of stuff. There's Comic-Con and people that do LARPing and like all kinds of stuff. I don't do that. I'm not into that. Transparently, I was into anime when I was younger. Big Dragon Ball Z fan when I was young. I don't really deal with it much anymore. Occasionally it passes on my Twitter feed and I'll like something, but that's about the extent of it. So anyway, I digress. I do think that there definitely is an avenue for that, and I do think that there will be other games that are developed on top of the XRPL. We've seen some metaverses kind of come and go. Futureverse, I think, is probably the winner in that capacity. They seem to have some adoption by Adidas and other large brands. What I've seen them put out at Futureverse that interacts with the XRPL, it's pretty realistic. Like, they have some pretty cool stuff. And so if I was going to pick a project that's going to be successful, and Ripple's obviously, giving them a grant and is behind them, that would probably be my pick. But again, I know the gentleman here that's close to me, and I think that he's done a really good job with Crypto Land and everything that is involved with that. What's interesting about his game in particular is that all the users are in Southeast Asia. It's not like crypto native people that even play that game. And I think that's why they've been able to weather the storm that a lot of other people weren't. And there's also why there's some animosity against the gentleman and his success from some of the other creators in the space, because he has been successful and he has adoption outside of just people that are crypto native. And that, I think, will bring a lot of volume to stuff that is built on any one of these networks, is mass adoption by people that don't even care about crypto. They just like the way that something happens or transactions work or the efficiencies that this stuff creates inside those ecosystems. And honestly, I think that maybe ICP or Hedera or or some of these other networks will likely be the winners for gaming, but the XRPO is the best network for identity. So have to see that. I think there's a possibility, but I think it's going to be on other networks. So let's see here. Good question, though. Hey, cool. Person from Norway. Loyen? Probably butchered that. Apologize if it did. They say the taxes here are quite high. It's unfortunate. I'm wondering if you have any partners close to Norway that I can utilize before price appreciation and XRP. Also Dubai and Turkey. I have family. If you have a way to get to Dubai and set up an entity, that would be what I would recommend. We do have a team that's in Switzerland that can help you. That's not too far from Norway. And again, I'm not good at geography. That's not my thing. So if it is, that's, disregard my ignorance. But they would be able to help you irrespective. Sachs Global is that team. And if you want to email me at info or just jake@digitalfamilyoffice.io and ask me this question here, they can help you set up an entity, in Dubai if you do have family there, and if that's a place that you plan to visit or move to on the other side of price appreciation. Big G also says, secondly, given your expectations for XRP price appreciation, what percentage of the total crypto market do you expect XRP to be at end of year, 5 years, 10 years? Ooh. What percentage of the total crypto market cap? It depends on how things go. If we get a settlement between the SEC and Ripple, and we see full-scale adoption of the XRPL, we get these other amendments passed. If no other network really has identity on it at scale that's interoperable or native to the mainnet, and they're out front, it could be significant, like far beyond Bitcoin and how dominant it's been. Bitcoin dominance has continually dropped over time. I think XRP dominance will continually grow over time. So you mentioned kind of end of year this year, 5 years, 10 years. If Ripple is successful in their endeavor for quote unquote all the money, if they slam the door on the rest of the crypto industry and have a settlement and don't get a judgment from Torres with any type of like benefit for the rest of the industry, and there's no precedent, and the SEC or another legal body is able to go after other projects unencumbered, and we don't get a relief from Gensler, or there's a lot of different ways that this could go. There's some speculation out today that Gensler is going to step down in Q1 next year, or get removed, or after Biden's gone. People have been saying that for a long time. We're all hopeful for it, right? It'd be hard to give you specific numbers. Again, I could probably give you a range. I think greater than 50% for all of the time frames that you've mentioned here. Finished submitting my DWP questionnaire yesterday, which it asks, why did I choose DWP? One word, trust. Thank you for that, Robert. That's cool. The deal with us, and I don't want to on horn, but obviously we've built it, and I think it's, I know I have conversations with all these institutions and different players. We had multiple of them today. The stuff that we're thinking about and the things that we're working on are far beyond the scope of anything else in the industry, which is weird. I never really anticipated being in a position where we would be the front runner on some of this stuff. And that comes with pros and cons, right? Pros is we're progressive, we're pushing the envelope, we're going to get to market first, we'll be, kind of a leader in this space, thought leader in this space. Downside, you got to build it all. It doesn't exist. And so that's frustrating at times. I view DWP and Digital Ascension Group, this is the conduit really for a lot of these players to have incentive to work together. Anchorage has done a good job of orchestrating a lot of things around the wealth management side that other custodians and exchanges really just haven't put together yet. We're the first wealth management firm to work with Archax and moving all of our clients from standard custody over there, migrating them. Same thing with standard custody. When I got there and proposed this to them, their UI was built a certain way, their infrastructure was a certain way. They really didn't have, they had the capability to be able to provide the services that I was asking for, but they had to basically, kind of cater some stuff toward us. That's what we're dealing with at Archax. And then for the reporting and billing and like stuff that you would do at a traditional RIA that just exists because that industry's been around for so long and there's so many players and their competition. Stuff doesn't exist in crypto because there just really hasn't been full adoption of this industry yet. It's still nascent. There's really not. I mean, there's literally one other family office that does anything similar to us. And there's very few RIAs that if they're accepting capital and it's going into crypto, they're taking cash and then deploying it. We're very unique in that people are willing to trust us and work with us, like you mentioned here, to hold their digital assets, insure the digital assets. But we want to make sure that, we don't have control over it, right? You sign over to work with us. We have fees associated with that to be able to advise you and deploy the capital and earn yield. But at the end of the day, you're still signing the transactions on your account. We don't have a way to do anything without your input and signature. Everything is a multi-sig wallet, and that removes any counterparty risk for you. If you're signing a transaction, you get to review it. You understand what's going on with your portfolio. It's held in institutional custody. It's never moved around. You get the insurance on it. You get a trusted party that you can work with to make sure that you're making intelligent decisions with all of the different products and services that we're orchestrating and creating to be able to provide for people. So thank you for the kind words here and your trust in us and willingness to work with us and be a leader with us in this industry. It's really cool to just have such great support and great people to work with. So thank you, Robert. Living legacy. Always good questions as usual. They've asked, can I please have your honest opinion, always, on how many XRP the average person should hold long-term to make long-term money from the XRP ledger, AMMs? I realize this is different for all. Depends on what you think it's going to go to. I always just work backwards from everything, right? So to your point here, it is going to be different for everyone. I write down, and I've been through this exercise before on here, but I would write down my dream lifestyle, whatever that is. If you're taking private jets, you're on yachts, you're traveling, you're living it up, you've got a nice home. Maybe you don't want all that. You just want a decent home and a nice neighborhood. You want your priority is your children. You want them to go to a quality school or education. You want to take care of your parents. You want to give to charities. You have philanthropic. There's a lot of different things that you could possibly want, right? Figure out what all that is. What's your dream life look like? Okay, write it all down. Dream. I want you to dream. Then figure out the cost for that, and you'll total it up, right? So on a monthly basis to have my dream home, it's going to cost this much if I finance it. My car, my trips, my toys, my child's education, my charity, my parents' cost of living, my whatever it is. Total it all up. Okay. And at the bottom of that, we want to figure out a way to be able to produce double that in passive income. So if that's all from the AMMs, if it's all from XRP, it could be from, a bunch of different investments that you have that pay for different components of it. That way it's diversified and kind of hedged a little bit. Hopefully, you're getting it from different sources. So if one or two of them fall off, the other ones can pick it up. But if you're making double the amount from passive income, from diversified sources, and it's not all like 60% of your income comes from one source, then if one thing, doesn't work out one month or something else, then you're always covered, right? And so that's kind of my definition, but it is my definition of financial freedom, is you're making twice your monthly expenses for a good quality of life from passive income. So, figure out what all that number is. And then I would work again backwards from that and say, okay, in order for me to be able to produce this much, I think that the AMMs are going to produce, let's say they're 5% more than, prime, whatever the prime rate is. So right now, prime's 5.5. You're earning 10% out of an AMM. I think that that's completely reasonable, especially if it's allocated appropriately and you're in an AMM where both assets are appreciating over whatever term you're making that allocation. I think you could easily get 10%, probably even in something that, is a stable coin and something else that appreciates. How much do you need for 10% of that to produce, twice your monthly expenses? And I would just work back from that. If that's really your goal and that's what you want to use as your vehicle for passive income, again, I always like to have some diversification with that, and we can work with you. As time goes on, you can take a portion of that income and disperse it somewhere else to be able to build up other positions and assets that do cash flow, or borrow and do the same thing. But so you're looking at what interest rate you think you're going to be able to earn your monthly expenses. You'll be able to double that, work back from that, and then you're going to look at the price of XRP, where you think it's going to go over what term, and then you'd be able to work back to what your bag size should be. And the longer that you're going to hold XRP or other assets, whatever those might be, you can kind of assess, what price you might think it might be at that point. So hopefully, I know you wanted like a specific number, like I talked to this many people and this is how much they hold. And so this is what I think is the number. And I've said this before, if you're in the top 1% of holders or 0.01% of holders, you're doing really good. If you want like tangible numbers that you could go look up for richlist.info. Francis Bovine runs that deal. If you guys don't follow him on Twitter, I would go check him out. And when the site goes down, just know like there's a guy that's nice enough to run that site and have that data for people. And he put that up after the original owner and provider of that actually shut it down. I think it was like 2.5, 3 years ago. So appreciate you, Francis. Greg, what's going on? He says, Jake, a while back, I believe you talked about opening up a product similar to iTrust Capital. And if that's true, could I roll the 401k into a Roth after paying taxes like I did with iTrust? Yes, would be the answer to that. You would want to do that at whatever other custodian you currently work with at the 401k, because it's going to be cheaper to be able to do it that way. Pay the taxes on it, and then you'd be able to either send us the money or purchase assets on iTrust or another platform, and then roll that over to us after doing so. Anchorage is who we're working on with that. And we should be able to earn yield with your assets inside of the IRA, which would then fund a side account. And you have a lot more liberty with that side account to be able to borrow against it and do things that you can't really do with a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, or even an IRA, LLC, or trust, which is what we would figure out how to roll it into. So, yes, is the answer, and yes, we would be able to help you do that. So, looking forward to that. It's probably going to be end of this quarter, if I'm being realistic, before we have that capability. Xavier Bison, probably again butchered that, sorry. Good question here, though. He says, thank you for all that you do and share. How much does one has to have invested in crypto, or how much does my crypto have to be worth for you to work with someone? So $100,000 is in value is the minimum threshold to work with us. That's really on the custodian side. If it were up to me, we would be willing to work with people that were a little bit less than that. But at that point, it actually becomes meaningful for custody fees and a lot of the other stuff that we do. So that's the minimum, is $100,000 in digital assets, and those assets do have to be held in an LLC or some type of entity. It could be a trust, it could be an LTD, it could be in different jurisdictions. That's different things. But there needs to be an entity that owns the assets, and they need to be at least $100,000 in U.S. dollar value, as of today, in order to be able to work with us. Good question. Carl says, thanks for getting the LLC set up. Easiest process possible. We try to make it super simple. So yeah, thank you for working with us, Carl. Pay me an XLM. It's good to see you. They said, hello, Jake. The buy, borrow, die strategy. Can you give an overview of how it can be applied for digital assets? Thank you. Will we see the chain soon? I mean, we're building it. So we have lenders that we work with to allow leverage against digital assets. Obviously, we do that responsibly. We're always looking at a lower LTV, and we try to get preferred interest rates for our clients. But if you anticipate significant appreciation on assets, as long as the appreciation outpaces the interest rate at which you borrowed, you can always borrow more and pay back the other loan and continue to borrow in perpetuity. And you never have to pay the loan back, because when you die, the assets pay the loan back for you. So you see this done. I actually posted a video in the Mastermind about how family offices do this and basically pay themselves back. So they will, fund a life insurance policy for their children or whatever family member comes into existence. And they'll make sure that that's maintained for the amount that they borrow from the family bank life insurance policy over their lifetime. So when they pass away, whatever that is, the bank that they borrowed against those assets pay off that policy that they borrowed against, but the life insurance policy that they had on that individual funds the bank back all of the amount or more than what they actually borrowed and had to pay back over the lifetime. Which sounds crazy and illegal, but that's how they do it. You can set up as many policies as you want for as many people as you want. As long as they're funded and they're structured correctly, they're good to go. And you obviously got to maintain paying the premiums on them, and there's some other components there that go into that, but that's the basic premise. Insurance is a very powerful tool. Definitely something that we work with our clients on. I actually met with a gentleman today that had some really interesting ways to fund PPLI that removed some of the obstacles that had been in the way. I don't really want to say in the way, but harder to work with. They put things together in a really interesting way. So, but to your point here, like I mentioned to begin with, and David Schwartz broke this down, and I reposted it on my Twitter. He was like, let's say you had. I'll just walk through an example here, because that's a little more tangible for people. You've got $10 million in assets. Okay. You 50% LTV against those assets. So you got a $5 million line of credit that you draw down, you spend it, cool, you run it up. But while you're doing that over the time frame, whatever it is, a couple years, those assets actually appreciate to 20 million or 50 million. Now you just borrow $10 million against the new amount of assets that exist there, pay back the other loan, and continue to accrue interest on the new loan as long as it's less again than the assets are going to appreciate over that term. Then again, whenever it comes due, you would just borrow from the larger amount, pay back the smaller amount, and have the same amount of cash that you originally borrowed to go through again over whatever time frame it was. You want to do this responsibly. You want to be methodical about it. You don't want to take too much leverage. You don't want to put yourself in a position where your assets could fall in value and you'll have to meet a capital call. There's some considerations around a lot of this stuff. So it's not just simple ho-hum, borrow, die, pays itself back. You want to work with people and professionals that this is what they do. On the infinite banking concept, that's literally what it is. You become your own bank. You use your assets as collateral, and they're invested somewhere that they will appreciate, faster than the interest rate is accruing debt. So hopefully that gives you kind of a better understanding of that. We ran some of that down in the article, but I don't think I gave a specific example like this one. So if you have further questions on it, just put them in the chat below, and we'll run them down. AJ, hey, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, hey, Jake, how do you see XRP price appreciation given the escrow release monthly? Does Ripple sell their entire billion XRP? And when the escrow release is complete, will scarcity drive up price? A lot of questions here. So Ripple does currently manage the escrow. I don't know that that'll be the case always, but that is the case currently. They went through the last escrow from 2018 in 2022, and then they rolled it all back and did it again until 2027. And I believe they're time locked, and then also there's circumstances in which they unlock also. So anyway, the billion that comes onto the market each month, they use whatever they need to in order to maintain price stability, and provide liquidity to the ecosystem, similar to like the Fed would, or a lender of last resort, or somebody that was maintaining stability within markets. They would allocate that appropriately, and anything that they don't use beyond what's needed, they just roll back in on the back end of the escrow. So, if it comes out and they only need 400 million XRP to meet the goals that they've set forth for the network, they roll the other 600 billion back in on the escrow. Once the escrow is over, will scarcity drive up price? So when they escrowed 50 billion XRP, that's actually, according to lore and history, what actually kicked off the bull run 2017, 2018 was the scarcity on supply and constricting supply. Demand jumped, and it kicked off the bull run for the crazy logarithmic move that everybody looks at on the chart. If they release all of the escrows, we would have 100 billion XRP. Well, there won't ever be 100 billion XRP on the market because some of it's been burnt for transactions, and there is XRP burnt every single day for transactions. So I don't think that it would actually benefit price in the way that you've mentioned here. if they just dumped all the escrow back on the market now, there would be way more XRP available for the same amount of demand, and therefore price would become lower. So if there was 100 billion XRP, again, there wouldn't be a full 100 billion, but let's say they just released the whole escrow back onto the market, you would see XRP's price basically drop in half from what it is now. It wouldn't be the other way around. Now, if this is on the other side of XRP Utility and there's way more demand than there is today, then once the escrow's out and there's really no way to continue to hold price stability by selling that onto the market into the demand, price would be driven as high as it could go until people were willing to sell or get rid of it, right? What price is that? If it's like Bitcoin, $60,000 or 70, back to 68,000, whatever we're at today. I don't know. I don't know what price it'll end up being long term. I think that there's a scenario where it gets to 7 digits, but we'll see. And I do think that that'll be after all of the escrow is released. So to your point here, that could be the case. But all good questions. Hopefully that was valuable for you, and I was able to explain, at least a little bit on how all that stuff works. Atlantic Living says, hope all's well. Thank you. I did have a good weekend. Can you share with the audience a reasonable number of XRP to be holding long term, never sell, in order to capitalize on the XRP AMMs? So this is worded a bit differently than you did your previous question, so I appreciate that. If you're going to participate in the AMMs, the way that I would like to, and we'll be successful with this, we'll figure out a way to do it, participate in the AMMs is hold your XRP in institutional custody and then use pseudo accounts to basically delegate that liquidity into the pool. Talked with Ripple about that the other day, and they seemed like, anyway, it was an interesting conversation. To never sell. I think any amount of XRP long term would be lucrative for people, especially if you got an XRP at what it is today, 50, 60 cents, and it does go to $50,000 a piece. They use it in the derivatives market. Jimmy Valley has, a circumstance that he put together with the quants and people that he had there where XRP was like $53,000 was the price that they assessed. It's possible. You don't need that much to be able to generate a pretty significant yield. Even if you just had, if you had 100 Bitcoin today, like doing pretty good. I think that's kind of how it'll be for XRP long term. Like there'll be people that have wallets that have, 20 of them in there that they forget about. And years from now, if they don't burn all of those prior to price appreciation, getting that high, be able to pull those XRP out of those wallets and be doing pretty good. So depends on how big a player you want to be. I will say this, regulation is looking like you're going to need to be a broker dealer if you're going to be participating with more than 50 million, or you're going to have to be able to park it with a broker dealer and they're going to be the one allocating it to the pool. These are all things that we're looking into and working on to make sure that we're in a position to be able to provide those services for people. So, if you think XRP is going to $50,000 and you had 1,000 of them, that's your 50 mil. And, if you're going to want to participate in these things without any oversight or partnering or that, then probably want less than that. If you don't care about that, if you have strategic partners, if you want to work with us, we're happy to help you earn a yield on however much XRP you have in the AMMs. As that gets built out and we feel comfortable and we know that we have a way to mitigate risk and loss and permanent loss and be able to generate a significant yield for people, which I do anticipate happening probably. It'll probably be early next year on that, just being transparent. I think it's going to be a while before we actually get 64, 65, and 66 implemented on the network. And because of that, we'll obviously watch AMMs. We will do trial runs, and especially once there's institutional adoption, we have digital identity and oracles in place. I think that those will become much more prominent. So we'll definitely be doing research and figure out how to leverage them and earn significant interest. But until we feel really comfortable with being able to delegate from, qualified custody using the pseudo accounts, it's probably not something that we'll actively manage for our clients or risk. So, appreciate the good questions. Let's see here. At what price per XRP? Should I open an LLC with your company? Let's say I have 8K XRP specifically for this move. Are you married or single? That matters. Once you have about $50,000 in value, whether you have, and I'll just say this, if you have a normal company and you're doing something, even if it's a hobby, if you're like just a side hustle, okay, when you start generating more than $50,000 in revenue, that's probably when you need to set up an LLC. Benefits this, a lot of this stuff. If you have assets that are worth more than $50,000 that you think are going to appreciate substantially or be able to generate revenue, that's again probably when I would start to look to set up an LLC. When you start creeping north of that $250,000 mark, especially if you're single, if you're married, might be a little north of that. That's when I would start looking at trusts. But it's always good to have an LLC set up outside of your trust for a myriad of reasons, which I won't get into. But yeah, that's for what you've asked here. When your assets reach north of $50,000 in value. Roger, he says, Jake, on your interview with Ray Fuentes, you mentioned how you wake up every morning excited to help people with what you're doing. It's palpable. I can feel it. Same with Mikkel. Thank you. Yeah, I get jazzed up. It's fun. I get a lot of fulfillment from what I do, and what we're building, and the team that we have. It's great to work with other like-minded people that have aligned interests that really do genuinely care about people. And there's just not a whole lot of people out there that are even talking about this stuff. And so to be able to have cool conversations with people that get it on a regular basis, I get jazzed up about that. And then I've worked in sales my whole life, almost my whole entire working career. And actually, you know what? I would say yes. My entire working career has been some type of sales position the whole way through. And in all those other jobs, and I would call them jobs, 4-letter words, you get up and you're not like raring. Like I was never raring to sell fasteners or PPE or safety equipment or bearings or clothes or bank accounts or insurance or a lot of that stuff. People were going to buy it, and I think people would rather buy from somebody they know, like, and trust. And so that's kind of how I jazzed myself up to like work with people and make sure that they were taken care of, and I felt good about being their go-to for whatever it was that they needed. But I didn't really feel like I was making an impact on their life. And what we're doing now, like, it's meaningful, right? Like we're helping people put themselves in a position, their families in position to structure this in a way where they're not going to lose it. And they're going to be able to help other people, help people around them, donate to things, really make differences in their lives, their communities, their families, and the people around them, and hopefully the world at some level. So anyway, thank you for the comment here. I really enjoy what we do, and some days it's rough, but it's always worth it. STR, yes, I was running late, and I apologize. Let's see here. Scroll on down. This is where I was running late. So again, appreciate you guys being patient, hanging out. Nathan Valdez, he says, what are the fees to join your group once XRP hits a high value? And how much would I have to hold in XRP assets to be welcomed in your group? It depends on, well, I say it depends on what group. The Mastermind, we will definitely raise prices on. I was talking to a member a little bit earlier this evening, and he said the velvet rope will get tighter and the bouncers will get bigger. And I would agree with that. We're very proud of the culture that we have within the community there in the Mastermind. Just wonderful individuals that are part of that community, all willing to help one another, and they want to grow, and they have aligned interest. And it's, I started out with a specific vision for how I wanted people to interact, and I don't know if I don't like to attribute it to myself. I think that the community itself and the original individuals that partook in that just exude a certain frequency or whatever you want to call it, right? And that attracts a certain type of person. And so it's just continued to build in the same direction. But I'm protective of that. And so on the other side of price appreciation, I just want to be leery of people that may have malintent or may not. They may put other people's interests above. They may put their own interests above the community or other people within the community. And so we'll just be vetting people more stringently on the other side of that. I don't know what prices we'll go to for the Mastermind. I can tell you, work with us at the family office, it is $50,000 a year is our retainer. And then, to work with the wealth management, we do have a fee schedule and structure there. I try to make that a no-brainer, really. So I'll just kind of run down fees on that for people. Traditionally, wealth managers charge 2% AUM or assets under management annually, and we also take a piece of whatever they make. That ranges, depending on who you're working with. I like hedge fund model or a private equity firm. We've run other deals. We run private deals in the community, and we structure them this way. The standard in that industry is 2 and 20. The way that I put this together for the wealth management side, it is a progressive scale and a waterfall. So anything under 5 million, we still charge the 2%. And that's really just to meet the needs of the firm. There's compliance and overhead and salaries and just a lot of cost on that side of things. When you crest 5 million, between 5 million and 10 million, we charge 50 basis points, or 0.5% is what that is. So it drops substantially, as assets appreciate over time for people. And then beyond 10 million, we only do 40 basis points, or 40% of 1%, which, on $10 million would be $40,000. So again, a traditional asset manager would charge you $200,000. We're doing 40,000. So substantially less than almost anybody else in the industry would charge. And then on that, we don't make another dime until the person we're working with, or the company that we're working with, because we only work with companies, generates at least 8% yield. So, and there's no catch up. That's a pref paid specifically to the client. We don't take any piece of the first 8%. If we are able to generate north of 8%, we do an 80-20 split. So anything between 8% and 20% returns, which is where we're going to live. We're not going to be taking outlandish risk. Any risk we are taking, we're going to make sure that we're mitigating the downside and purchasing options to ensure that, or make sure that we are positioned in case we're wrong. Costs money. To just like any other insurance would. So I'd expect that the majority of the time we will be generating yields for our clients that are somewhere between 8 and 20%. And again, we're entitled to 20% of anything beyond the 8%. So anything before the 8% goes to the clients. If somehow we generate north of 20% for clients, which I do think that there are circumstances that will happen. I think that there'll be specific AMMs if you get in early and you're timed the market correctly. Will generate north of that. Other things that we get into, especially if interest rates stay where they're at or go higher, I think that those will be reasonable rates that can be generated in the market, again, with responsible risk, mitigating to the downside. Anything north of 20% is going to be 50-50. So if we make you, if you got $10 million parked with us and we make you $2 million on that $10 million in 1 year, we would we'll run down the math here so people can kind of understand. A traditional asset manager would probably be closer to 2 and 20 of the whole thing. So you're looking at 2% of the 10 million and then another 20% of the so 200,000 for the AUM, and then they would do 20% of 2 million, which would be 400,000. So they make 600,000 when you made 2 million. So you end up with 1.4. We don't take anywhere near that much. So let's say the first 8% would be 800,000. That goes direct to you, nothing for us. And then we would get 20% of the 1.2. So times 0.2. So 240 plus the 40,000 for the AUM. So 280 instead of 400,000, or 280 instead of 600,000. So less than half of what a normal asset manager or wealth manager would take in that circumstance. So want to be super competitive. We want to, and we don't make any money on assets that are brought to us with appreciation. So just to be transparent there also, let's say, you bring $1 million XRP and it goes to $1 billion. We don't get any of that. The only time the firm is compensated is when we do something with the assets and provide value, and that generates returns. So if we put that billion to work somewhere and generate a return on it above and beyond the appreciation of the asset itself, that's the only time we would be compensated. So I tried to structure this in a way where I would want to be a client. Everything that I've ever done for the entire firm that we've put together, a lot of the stuff was me being selfish. I sought these people out. I built the network. I worked through the estate planning, got the custody. I built out the partnerships to be able to borrow, lend, earn, because I want it. And then I'm able to, work with them to be able to generate a partnership and create models and help other people. So I looked at this the same way. If I was a client of a firm, how would I want this structured? And in what way is it a really big win-win for me and them? And the way that I put it together was basically, we don't make any money unless we generate our clients significant returns. So anyway, I know that was really long-winded for what you've asked here. But to, kind of hone in on what you asked, prices in the mastermind will go up post-price appreciation. We will be vetting people much more stringently. And then on the family office side, we'll be looking at 20 million or more in assets that somebody holds instead of just the $100,000 threshold that it is right now. Let's see here. Marcia says, in the Discord, the only place to go for content, if you remember, is the Discord. Yeah. I'm not very good at using it. I know. You're not alone on that. Working on getting better at it, but for older person, I don't think Discord is very friendly. I would agree with you, Marcia. We I had a conversation with Max about this today. I think I'm going to put together a little welcome video for anybody that joins, just to kind of walk you through where things are in the Discord so that you can figure out, how you can best get the most value from it. because that has been a topic of conversation a lot of different times from people. And this is good feedback and criticism. It's constructive criticism. That's how I take it. What can we do to be better and provide people more value? So that's the conclusion we've come to is, either somebody needs to get on an onboarding call with some people and basically kind of walk them through the platform, which, Living Legacies commented right below you here. He's probably somebody that would be willing to help you with that. And then I think I am going to shoot a video that will just come to you or anybody that joins the mastermind in the startup email that you get once you sign up, and it'll walk through the different features of the Discord, how to get signed up, where to go in there to get all of the content and the conversations. So thank you for the feedback here. And it's definitely something others have echoed, and we are working on it. So let's see here. Peaky Blinders, good to see you on here, brother. Hope you're having a wonderful evening. Roger has said, like to hear protecting investors. XRP seems to be one of your primary goals. Nice to earn a good return, but not at the expense of losing XRP. That's the goal, right? Out of Warren Buffett's playbook, number one rule: don't lose money. Second rule: refer to rule number one. Our number one rule is don't lose XRP. Rule number two: refer to rule number one. So we're always thinking about mitigating risk of loss, really with any asset, but especially with XRP, because it is the majority of what our clients hold. So Bitcoin and Ethereum too, though. It's not like we exclusively only work with XRP holders. We do have clients that hold significant amounts of Bitcoin and Ethereum. We do provide products and benefits around that aside from our main focus. So J Tank says, I got my bags packed and ready for takeoff. $10 XRP. I don't work my regular job anymore. Anything above is gravy. I would cash flow. I wouldn't say quit your job, the day that you did things pop off, unless you just really hate it. I would make sure that you got things in place, and I would wean yourself off of that and just make sure that you do have an income. You're never wrong to keep working, especially when you have, quote unquote FU money, and you can step away at any time, right? They no longer have leverage over you. There was, when I did really well in 20 and 21, I can't tell you really how liberating that was to go to work every day and not need to, or felt like I didn't need to, right? And when they had an annual review, and I was able to step away from that job because of the cushion that I had, and I don't know that I would have done that if I hadn't been in that position. When you need the money, it's hard to basically, tell people to pack sand on something. But it's nice to be in that position, right? But I'm not, if you don't have to quit your job right away, if you have something else you immediately want to work on that's going to generate income for you, cool. More power to you. Start building your dreams. But I would just be methodical about how you did that. I would get assets in place that were producing cash flow to be able to generate enough to cover whatever your current expenses were, and then step away from that job once you knew that you had stuff situated. I see a lot of people make emotional decisions. I myself have made plenty of emotional decisions in my lifetime, and sometimes those don't end well. So not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, be thoughtful about how you do it. STO says, hey, Jake, if I set up all the infrastructure to reduce now, and assuming that the laws will change, then I want to sell my crypto assets. How will this work? How will this affect the company, LLC fund, or whatever I set up? really kind of jumbled here, but I think I can discern what your question is. Basically, if legislation and laws change on the other side of price appreciation and you've already structured these things, is it a problem? Pros and cons. Entities aren't going away. Trusts aren't going away. A lot of the legislation and laws that exist now aren't going away. Income taxes might go away. The tax code definitely might change. And if that does, then that's great. But anonymity and probate and estate tax and being able to intelligently structure your assets so that you're self-insuring or your estate so that you're self-insuring and be able to circulate value within an ecosystem, none of that's going to change. The paradigm about how people do this stuff through DeFi and some of the other things that get built out could definitely revolutionize some of the way that these things happen, but the general concepts around this, they're going to continue for a significantly longer period of time. There's just a lot of vested interest in infrastructure that's been built up, and for that to go away overnight, it's highly unlikely. Like the world's melting down if that's the case. So, we talk about mitigating taxes a lot on this, and that kind of is. I mean, that really is our number one concern because it's your largest expense over your lifetime. If the tax laws change, great. There's still going to be some tax. It's not like you can get away from that. It doesn't matter where you live. So you just want to be able to use the tax laws to your benefit, and to be able to do that, a company is always going to have a larger breadth of the tax code accessible to it than an individual. So putting your assets in a company is never going to be a bad thing. Putting your assets in a trust or a portion of them in a trust, I'm not going to say is never going to be a bad thing, as long as you really think about the long-term implications of what that looks like for control and how you're structuring it. Not going to be a bad thing. If you rush into something and you don't know what you're doing and you're not working with the right people, that can be a problem. So those are, how I think through this and a lot of the considerations. And I've asked myself the same question multiple times, right? Because that is always a consideration. If regulations change or the constraints change, is what I'm doing today going to be viable in the future? And the answer is yes. I've looked at it, and I have biases and probably some blind spots, right? So just transparently take it with a grain of salt, because I'm sure I could be presented with new data. Somebody on here could put something in here that I hadn't thought through. But I've tried to think through all those different scenarios, and in all of them that I've come up with, there's still no negatives to working with us and getting things established now. Chris, appreciate the kind words. Don't tell people how much you have, brother. You got your name on your YouTube channel, and maybe you don't. Maybe that's not your real name. So if it's not, that's good. But don't tell people how much you have. And again, if you're concerned about, in comparison to other people, I wouldn't be. I would look at your lifestyle, your needs, and where you want to be, time frame, price appreciation, what interest you'd be able to earn against it, and then kind of work backward from there. If 20,000 XRP meets those needs long term based on the price appreciation that you feel XRP is going to have, then it's a good amount. If you think you're going to need more, then you need more. You could need less depending on what price you think it's going to go to. And then it's definitely a good amount, right? So I think people ask simple questions. I don't want to say bad questions, but simple questions with not a whole lot of context around them. And without the rest of that context, I can't really give you the type of answer that I think you're asking for. And maybe I'm wrong and you're not asking for that type of answer, but it's the same way when I was working with people for diet and physique and all those things. And sometimes people just don't know the questions to ask or what content or constraints they need to list around the question in order for somebody to be able to give them a detailed answer. So what I'm trying to provide for people is just some of the context that would matter in those circumstances. And if that's included in the question, then I can definitely answer it. But again, you'd be airing out a lot of your personal stuff on here. And so that's why we have, Digital Ascension Group, digitalfamilyoffice.io, and Digital Wealth Partners, where you can disclose that information in a private environment and work with one of our advisors and get an answer specific to your situation. So, or you can get in the mastermind, and there's a lot of good people in there that can answer questions as well. Hey, cool. Thank you for the super chat. Goated Ghost Crypto. They say, hey, Jake, can you provide guidance on the most effective strategies to minimize taxes for Liquidity Event involving XRP step by step? I can provide a bunch of different ways that you can mitigate taxes. I don't know what your circumstances are, but I'll run down the most common ones that I think people will use and things that we use. And then maybe, you can kind of think through some of those. And again, there's going to be stuff here that's a bit more complex or person dependent that I probably won't mention that we would in a call. So Section 179 of the tax code is one of my favorites. If Trump gets back in, I anticipate him bumping the depreciation that you can get on heavy equipment back up to 100% same year. So anything over 6,000 pounds qualifies as heavy equipment. That includes vehicles. So if you're buying a G-Wagon, if you're buying a Range Rover, if you're buying a truck, likely qualifies. And if you're going to be using it for work to drive and go meet with people that you're doing business with, or go to look at properties or whatever else you're investing in, then you can write that off. And if you bought a $200,000 vehicle and you put down $40,000, 20%, and you were able to write off the full $200,000 against your income, it's $160,000 that you get to keep in your pocket, and potentially about $30,000 on the taxes that you're not going to have to pay, which probably makes the payment and pays for the gas and the insurance and the maintenance on the vehicle at least over the next 12 months. So that's one of my favorites. You also have software on there. That's another thing. So if you have a business that is actually in the business of transactions in some capacity, and you plan to use the crypto that you're purchasing or the software that you plan on using in the future to be able to implement that in your business, and you know that you're going to need those digital assets to actually use that network and use it for your business, then you could potentially write those investments in digital assets off. We have CPAs that have written letters on that. So we feel confident in that the digital assets are software if they're used in that application and your business actually has an actual use case that you are purchasing those assets in anticipation of using them for. So take it with a grain of salt. That's one of them. Insurance is another great one. Key employee insurance, if you've set up an LLC or a trust, ideally an LLC or a company, you'd be able to fund that policy, max fund that policy with cash value. You got to be, you want to work with somebody that's going to make it where it's not a mech or overfunded and have problems. Carl works with us on that capacity. We can also do the PPLI, like the guy I talked with today. So that's another great way to do it. And you can write off the full amount that you fund the policy with and then draw down lines of credit against that policy. Again, similar to the infinite banking concept. The interest rates on that, if it's invested the right way and reinsured, if it's in indexes or something, you can get prime plus one. That's another option. You can look at, philanthropic things. There's just a lot of different things that you can do if your assets are in a LLC versus your personal name. So those are just some of them. If you want to run down full stuff that might be specific to you and your circumstance, travel is one. I'll mention that one too. So let's say you want to go to Nassau or the Bahamas or the Caymans or some exotic destination. Dubai. Okay. And there's a crypto conference that's there, or a conference around real estate, or really anything that you might be interested in investing in, because you're the manager of an asset management company and you strategically allocate that capital. You could then write off the plane ride, the flight, the food, if you're meeting with people and clients or doing business at the event, the hotel, the stay, the conference itself. Travel's another big one, and another way that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor and the capital that you've been able to generate, and further your business, right? So the government gives you, like, if you spend the money the way that they say in the tax code, you don't pay any taxes. That's literally what the tax code is for. It's to incentivize you to spend your money in the economy in specific ways to stimulate business activity and provide value. And if you're spending your money in alignment with the tax code, then you don't end up paying any taxes. So anyway, happy to again have a conversation with you independent of this live stream. Would love to talk with you, and thank you again for the super chat. AA Prod, let me ask a question everyone wants to know. After all the partnerships, sponsors, announcements from XRP, XLM, and XCC, why is price so low? Because they're not using it. That's the truth. All price that you see right now is driven by speculation and even suppressed by the companies to be able to hold price stability so that they can trial these public networks for certain applications. Once these networks have utility on them, you're going to know. And until then, you're going to continue with the same cycles and how they look now. They're going to continue to look this way until they're actually used, and then they won't look like they look today. So I know that's frustrating for people, right? You hear all this great news, and there's these sponsorships, and there's these announcements, and people have LOIs, and they have these backdoor deals, and they've got an allocation, and they've invested in this business, and all these things, and then nothing. This isn't a stock, okay? And so I think that's, people have this paradigm about making investments, that they've made an investment in a security or equity, and there's a company that's driving profits and value and the valuation of that stock, and you correlate the business activity that would normally be done that would generate returns in that type of environment and on those assets, and then you take those same constraints and put it on digital assets, and then people get frustrated that that's not how this works, because it's not. This is software. These are protocols. There is still speculation in this market based on things that do happen with businesses that are building on these networks, but it's not the same constraints that exist in the securities market. It's a completely different asset class, and again, there's some corollaries, but by and large, it's very different. And so once we start seeing utility of these networks, I think that the complete way that this market works and the dynamics is going to shift substantially, and in a direction that a lot of us are hoping for, but it's going to throw other people completely off balance, because I've had a conversation with a guy the other day, super intelligent. He flew here, has done really well. And he believes that these market cycles will continue. And I don't have anything to say that he's wrong, right? Anybody that said that was wrong up to this point has been wrong. So he may very well be right. But I do think personally that on the other side of utility and price appreciation for certain assets, a lot of the market dynamics that exist today won't in the future. I think things will become much more stable at higher prices. So anyway, I know that was a really long-winded answer for what you've asked here, but hopefully it gives you some insight and understanding as to why prices haven't moved if all of these things are going on. James says 50% LTV is above my pain tolerance for crypto. I think that's a very intelligent move. We normally look with like 20 or 30% LTV, just to be transparent, James. Our partners are willing to go up to 50 or 60% LTV. Not something we normally recommend. Clients get to make the call on that, not us. We can say, hey, this market's volatile and we could probably see, a 30% drawdown from here. And if we did, then, if you might have a capital call at that point. If you can't make it, they're going to liquidate a portion of your assets, and we don't want that. So just be aware, we disclose all those things with our clients, but some people are hell-bent on getting a certain amount, and they only have a certain amount of assets, and that's what they choose to do. And we provide the resources and capability to do it. But we're not liable. If things go poorly, we've done everything and put out all the measures that we can in place to make sure that you have every chance to be able to make the capital calls, put things in place so that you get first right of refusal, so before they sell your assets or liquidate you. I've done everything that I can to make sure that this is the best circumstance possible to mitigate losses. And again, 20 or 30% LTV, I think, is a much safer zone to be in versus 50 or 60. Exactly what you pointed out here. GM Porch says my hair is looking good. Thank you for the vote of confidence. I feel like I'm in that, like, when you grow your hair out. I did when I was in high school, so this is the only time I've ever done that. But like the tween stage where it's not long enough to look good yet, but it's also not short enough to look good. Like, starting to fall out in the front here, but the hairline's still there, and it's not long enough on top to like do anything with. So thank you for the kind words, but I feel like I'm in like the between ugly phase on it, but that's okay. I'm okay with that, right? I know that there's going to be a period in anything that I do where I'm uncomfortable or it doesn't look the way I want it, and you have to get through that phase for it to look like you want it to look on the other side. Every time I started dieting for bodybuilding, I always looked worse before I looked better, because like off season, you're like full and round and pumped up and you got a lot of food in your system and like you're strong, and then you start dieting and then you're like flat, but you're still fat-ish, and so you don't have the definition yet. And so there's a period of like the first 4 or 5 weeks when you're dieting for like a 12 or 16 week prep where you don't have enough definition yet to like offset how flat you are. And you're like, what? I thought I was dieting to look better, and now I look worse than I did when I was in off season. So there's always just a period of time in anything that you're doing, building a business, investing, getting a new hairline, that it's going to look worse before it looks better. So, but again, thank you for the kind words. Let's see here. Let's get on down to the bottom. Here we go. Wow, you guys are awesome with the super chats tonight. Halen's Razor says, it's crazy to think that we're on the bleeding edge of wealth creation. I have only 2 people in my circle, and they have even heard of XRP, let alone the AMM. Can't wait for the future, Randy. Yeah, if you're here and you're listening to this and you have any insight into digital assets or what they're going to be used for, and you believe in that, and you're not just speculating on meme coins or gambling or purchasing blue chip cryptos like Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think that you're in a very small class of people. And I don't know what drew you here. I can tell you that the majority of the people that I've had conversations with have some type of faith, however you want to take that. But it's been really interesting for me to see that correlation across almost everyone that we have conversations with. And again, people just resonate on a certain, and I sound like woo-woo with the frequency, but it's true. Like you kind of attract what you put out into the ether, the universe, and it's been really. Like I said, I get a lot of fulfillment from talking to people, learning about their life and how we can help them and what they want to do. A lot of people have big goals or dreams or aspirations, which is also awesome. And we work with a lot of wealthy clients also, and they've already kind of made it, and so they allocate something that's meaningful for them, but it's not like, a lot of people that we work with, it's like their life savings type situation. And they have that much conviction, which is that good? Is that bad? I think it's going to work out for them. I hope, and I'll say this about that. You should only have to get rich once. Okay. And I've talked about this before. Thank you again for the super chat. And I'm excited to be here with you, Randy. Wealth creation and wealth preservation are two very different skills. If you make a bunch of money, do your best not to lose it, right? Learn the other skills that you're going to need to be able to manage it. Jim Rohn says, if you make $1 million, best you become a millionaire. 70% of lottery winners go broke or bankrupt within 3 to 5 years. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we can work with a lot of people and, just continue to put out resources and content and education, and people, work and learn and educate themselves so that they don't make those mistakes. And the majority of the XRP community in general at large retains their wealth, and other people that make money on other digital assets. You've seen a lot of people make money on Bitcoin. You've seen a lot of people make money on Ethereum. One of the guys that I knew, I was an acquaintance that I met 3 years ago. He had made $1 billion in Ethereum, and I think he lost 80% of that in Luna. So my point with that is, don't bet the farm on it after this. Hedge some. I'm not saying don't take risks at all, but do them responsibly. Kevin O'Leary, this is kind of his portfolio allocation. I think this is a really good way to think through things and a good framework. So he never invests more than 20% of his total portfolio in one sector. So he looks at crypto as the 12th sector of the S&P 500. So you got energy, you got infrastructure, you've got medical, you've got all these different industries, right? Tech. He never invests more than 20% of his total net worth in one industry, and never more than 5% of his total net worth in one investment. To make his money, though, he invested everything he had in the company that he sold. So you see the difference there? He was willing to go all in on what made him the money originally, and he had a large exit, and then he diversified after. And now he just maintains his wealth through the diversification, hedges his risks, invests in uncorrelated asset classes, and he's, I don't know how much money he has. I'm sure it's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So anyway, that's what we're working with. That's how we advise clients. I have to think through these things myself because, I talk about being risk adverse, but at times, I'm willing to take big swings. And sometimes, if you bat a 300, you miss. And if you hit one out of the park, it's worth it. But if you only get so many swings and you miss all of them, so if you let's say if you knew you were going to hit 1 out of 10 or 3 out of 10, okay, you're going to hit 3 out of 10, but you only get 4 swings. Do you take all 4 swings? Because what if you strike out every time? Like, what if it's on the side of, the 7 that you're going to miss? I'm willing to bet on myself. I think a lot of people here that are watching this probably are. You have a certain competency and understanding about this asset class, and you're willing to take a risk for you and your family. And I think it is going to pay out for you. But on the other side of it, just make sure that you're really thinking through things and mitigating risk as much as you can. And diversification is a hedge against ignorance. So if you know for sure it's an absolute certainty, by all means go all in. But if there's any doubt, you might want to hedge. So, Denny, how are you? Well, sorry, shouldn't say your name. Honest Aim. Thank you for the super chat. He says, thanks for your incredible work and the leadership of the Mastermind. You answer our questions there every week. I sure do, twice a week. We just want to say thank you for how much you do and look forward to the deal flow post-moon. Yeah, a lot of, like I said, great people in the Mastermind group. We do have calls every Saturday and Monday for those members there. Talk about a lot of the stuff we talk about here, and then even more, a little bit more intimate with them, and talk about things and some of the conversations that we have with some of the parties that we're working with. Nothing that I can't share, but want to give them as much value as possible. And then we do run private deals in the community. So if you are not quite an accredited investor, but you think you meet the term sophisticated, you have a good understanding of whatever type of private equity you might want to get into. We do provide avenues for that. We provide financial education and business resources there. And we feel that qualifies the people that participate in the Carbon 1 level as sophisticated, and therefore they're able to participate on the private equity deals that we run there in the group. So if that interests you, would love to tell you more about that, but it'll have to be inside the Mastermind. And just to be transparent, like, I would love to just blab about it on here. You have no idea. The reason that I have to say it the way that I'm saying this, like the semantics around this, is literally regulation. So there's 506C deals that are Reg D funds that you can run where you market publicly and you can only involve accredited investors. If you run 506B, which is what we use, it has to be inside of a closed, controlled environment, and it has to be with, there's two pieces. The individuals that you're working with have to be sophisticated, meet that criteria, which I mentioned before, and you have to have a pre-existing business relationship. And so that's what the Mastermind does for us. It's super cheap to get in there. We feel like it's a huge value for the opportunity that it affords people. So anyway, I digress, but some people are like, oh, well, why don't you just talk about it on here? Because that's how I would be if I was listening to it and I didn't know. That's literally why, because I can't. So, Chadwick, thanks for becoming a member. We got to figure out, I think we put out some videos where you get like an hour or a day or a couple days, early access to stuff. So if you are a member, you do get those perks of the channel. Let's see here. All these people in the chat, y'all are awesome. I'm probably going to wrap it up here shortly, so I'm going to scroll on down to the bottom of the list. If I miss your question, I apologize, but I want to make sure that I'm cognizant of time. Let's see here. Marsha says, I feel that way about the faith in XRP and Ripple. I'm not one to do my own investing, but I was drawn like a moth to the flame. Can't really explain why. You're not alone. There's a lot of people that are like that. If you get it, you get it, right? Like, you can see it. And so, and I'll say this. I think we're at a point in history where this actually is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I talk to a lot of people that are older than myself and get perspectives from them. And the thing that I've kind of heard over and over from that group is you're going to get lots of once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Almost like every 3 to 5 years, you'll get a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The reason that I say this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is because all this stuff happens on cycles. What's happening right now with geopolitics, with the transition of leadership across the globe, with the implementation of these digital assets for how value moves and currencies changing shape, happens once every 80 to 120 years. I will not be alive. maybe I will. Maybe we come up with some really cool technology, and we've got like nanobots that repair your body and all the other fun stuff that I could ramble about. In the current circumstances that exist today, it's very unlikely that I will be alive 80 to 100 years from now at my current age. And so for me personally, I do feel like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, a once in three, 4 generations type opportunity, to be on the precipice of a transition in how value moves across the globe and the economy, and a complete revolution in money, and to be able to invest in something that will be a part of that system and structure for at least the next 100 years. That doesn't come around. It doesn't. Companies, absolutely. There's going to be lots of billion-dollar companies in the Mastermind group. I can guarantee you, we're going to see all kinds of deal flow on the other side of this. If I get my way, we're going to have the absolute best deal flow on the planet. Literally, view of everything on the planet. And we'll be very selective, and we'll get the cream of the crop on that. So, those will come around a little more often for the group there, but and those that work with the wealth management firm and their family office. But in general, unless you live in Silicon Valley, unless you're in Dubai, unless you're in some of these epicenters of where these companies are being created on a regular basis, you don't really see opportunities to invest in billion-dollar companies or startups that often, maybe once every 10 years. The closer in proximity you are to those epicenters, the more frequently you're going to see those opportunities. And the better you get at identifying them, because you see patterns, mostly with people and teams, not necessarily what their product is. It's the people that you invest in with companies. But to be able to invest in systems and protocols that are going to revolutionize the way value moves across the planet, that's not going to happen again. So for me, I know that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I've, again, I listen to a lot of people that are older than me, and they tell me, oh no, you'll get another one. And I'm not saying I'm smarter than them, because I don't think they're a lot wiser than me. They have a lot more life experience. I think I have a longer time horizon than most people in how I look at stuff. And I think that's really the only difference. And they use the circumstances and situations from their life experience to be able to make decisions and look at things. Whereas I read books like Principles from Ray Dalio. Jesus, it's late. I need to go to bed. Ray Dalio and other large hedge fund managers. I deal with family offices that look at centuries. That's how they plan things. And so over those time horizons, quote unquote, once in a lifetime opportunities are literally once in a lifetime opportunities, if you look at it through that lens. So I'm rambling on here, and I'm getting close to the point where I'm going to wrap it up. But we will take a few more questions before that happens. Apron's asking a good question here. He says, can XLM have the same trajectory as XRP? Up to this point, they've really traded in tandem. The only time that they didn't trade in tandem was when there was a speculation that the ETF had launched for XRP. It had a huge pop that day, and there was nothing on the XLM chart. So potentially they could trade in the same trajectory. But if one or the other had an ETF that was launched and the other one didn't, I anticipate that one would have significantly higher returns over the short term, while the other one continued to move on the same trajectory that it currently exists on. So not to say it wouldn't have significant returns. If you have a bull market, things are going to have returns. But if an ETF is launched on XRP, I think it's going to decouple from XLM. I could be wrong. that's what the chart showed. I'm just explaining the circumstance, and it's a one-off circumstance. So we'll see. Legacy 554 says, can I roll over some of my Roth IRA funds from my LLC to a personal Roth IRA if I decide to roll some funds back into my Roth IRA LLC? Is that considered as piercing the veil? This is a good question. It's probably something I would have to ask our team that we work with on the RIA side. Again, this is another market that we're moving in. Something that I'm all-knowing on. This seems a bit more complex than anything I've dealt with previous. I don't want to tell you wrong, so it's a question I'm going to ask this week. And if you want to ask it again, I don't know that I'll get to it tomorrow. Next Monday, I should have an answer for you. So, or shoot me an email. And then, again, you can just email it to jake@digitalfamilyoffice.io. If you'll ask me this question, I can forward it to the right people and then actually come back to you in an email with the answer to it. So that's probably the better way to go about it, because then I'll remember to do it. So, Marsha, thank you for the super chat, ma'am. Appreciate you participating tonight, and it's glad to have you here with us, and glad to have you in the mastermind. Hopefully Living a Legacy or one of our other members can help you get acquainted with the Discord. Hello, thank you for the kind words, brother. Yeah, I really enjoy getting on here and answering questions for people and working with y'all. Like I said, I get a lot of fulfillment from this. So thank you guys for taking the time out and, on a Monday night late and spending it here with me. Peaky Blinders says, I told you it's too late, man. I can't talk. He says, isn't that a Phil Collins song? Day Ralio. More bad humor by Peaky. Okay, I really got to dip. Appreciate the laugh, brother. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you for taking time out. There you go. He says it's Monday morning there, so you must be on the far side of Europe. Yeah, or it's super early there for you. And it's really cool that you've woken up in order to be able to sit here and hang out with me and the group. Like I said, super blessed. A lot of international people get on here, when I'm on here late, Australia and other parts of the world. And it's really cool to have that interest. We do have, hey, I feel like I'm shilling the mastermind group, but we really do have other channels in there for other jurisdictions. We have multiple members that are across the globe that deal with different circumstances, whether that's in their estate planning or mitigating taxes. And so they're able to get in those channels and kind of help one another through those situations as they learn different things. And then we provide our expertise there as well. So pretty cool to have, like I talk to our partners, and they're like, how do you have this like global network of people that you are working with or have here in the group? And I'm like, I don't know. I get on YouTube and I talk about some stuff and people listen, and for whatever reason they like me or the content, and then they engage and they come in the community, and now we have this this group of almost 600 people that are from all parts of the world that are have aligned interest and are there to help one another, and it's awesome. So just feel truly blessed and grateful for my life and everything that's happened over the last couple of years. And I think that trend's going to continue when we do see things pan out for digital assets. Rob X says, do you think 2024 is the last year we see XRP incense? Yes, I do. C said, had my initial with Mickle a few weeks ago. Can't wait for exciting times ahead. You the man. Praying for you, boss. Thank you, brother. Looking forward to working with you. And yeah, Mickle, he's special. Really glad to have him as part of the team, and it's just a lot of synergies. When I had him on, this deal, I guess it was like 4 months ago now. And he said he had his 65, and we kind of hit it off after that, and he wanted to come work with the firm. Just a no-brainer for me. Absolutely. So, super blessed to have him with us. And I'm glad you were able to meet with him and look forward to working with you. Amos says, just found you and subscribed. Thank you for what you do. Any advice on... Awesome, man. The algorithm is good. And on that, I haven't said it enough to chat here, but if you'll like and subscribe, and it does help, awesome people like Amos find us. He says, thank you for what you do. Any advice on how much XRP I should hold and length of time? I'll just say to the long term, right? So I think XRP is eventually 6-7 digits. I think that could take another 10 years. So into the early 2030s. How much do you want to hold? What's the relative value of that to the dollar at that point? I really do think that that's, in today's term of dollars, what it's worth at that point. So whatever that looks like for you, brother. I don't think there's a right or wrong amount to hold. I walk through, how to work backwards from your long-term goals to how much XRP you should hold earlier in the video. And this will be posted if you want to go back and watch it. It was like, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 minutes in. Very similar question was asked. So if you want to check it out there. But with that time horizon, you can kind of work back from there on what you think. And I do think that it'll be fairly easy to generate, somewhere between 8 and 20% returns on XRP using the DeFi and the other amendments that are proposed on the ledger. Last one. This is good. Ms. Sanchez says, hey, Jake, how soon can we get interest on our XRP? If I only have XRP, how could I get yield on it? Would I have to liquidate half of it? No. We hold it in qualified custody. We have institutional partners that allow us to earn a yield on it for our clients. And once we get everything stood up over there at Anchorage, that's one of the first things and objectives we have, is to start providing that for clients that work with us in that custodian. So sometime mid-August is really realistic time frame on that, maybe even sooner if everything goes faster than I think. So would love to work with you in that capacity. Again, if you guys want to work with Digital Wealth Partners, there's just 2 constraints that we have. One is that you hold your digital assets in an LLC or a trust. If you want to work with us to set up an LLC, happy to do that. It is, you just go to Digital Ascension Group. The website's digitalfamilyoffice.io. It's $1,000 all in. We do the articles of incorporation, the EIN, registered agent, provide you with a tailor-made template for an operating agreement for that LLC that holds digital assets. We'll send you a video on how to set up a bank account. A lot of people have frustrations there. And then we can recommend a virtual office also, if that's something you're interested in. So so once you have that set up, you move your assets in there, you get the full SOP on how to do that also. And then we can hold your assets there at the firm if they are worth more than $100,000 today. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks again for hanging out with me tonight and asking really great questions, as everybody always does. Your support means a lot to the channel. If you want to be part of the mastermind, we would love to have you there. Living Legacies put it down here in the chat for people. Like $25 a month for the social membership, and we try to provide so much value that seems crazy for the $25 a month. I've been in other groups that cost somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 up front, and I feel like we do as much or more than those groups did. So we'd love to see you guys in there. And again, if you do want to book a consult with the family office to be proactive, or you have enough assets to work with us, Digital Ascension Group, you're just going to go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. And if you want to work with the wealth management component of that, it's digitalwealthpartners.net. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, a wonderful evening, and we will see you on the next one.